All right. So if you look into the core of things, yes, why we are suffering from labor, we can find two major causes. One is that the nature resists. Nature is not ready to obey our will. It's not easy for our nature, for our physical, vital, and mental nature to be flexible enough. It has an inertia. So physical body doesn't like to be following exercises. Our brain doesn't like to think too much. We do not like to do any labor, excessive labor. So there is a resistance of nature. And the other cause is, which is more fundamental, is psychological, is the difference between the inner need and the inner development, inner uniqueness of our nature and our outer nature. So we are looking, what are we looking for? We are looking for something which would correspond to our inner self-development. All our activities have to correspond with our inner self-development. Then there is a harmony. Then there is an interest to do something. If there is a distraction, if there is a disconnection of the inner need in the self-development and the outer activity, then we suffer it. This suffering is psychological. It's not only the inertia of nature which adds to this problem, but also there's a need in self-development and self-finding. All our activities are to be, truly speaking, educational. They should help us to discover ourselves, help us to know ourselves better, to enjoy our self-discovery. Um,
I have one question about the nature. But nature is also always in labor. Why you speak about that she doesn't like to do work?
um, she doesn't like a violation of her own equilibrium. Of course, she does all the work. It is nature who does everything. But what she doesn't like is this our intrusion and our correction of her work. So to say, we are always in contradiction with the flow of nature. If we would follow our own inner nature, and without there will be correspondence with it, there will be no problem. There will be a total harmonious and happy life. There are, you most probably you met some people of this kind who are happy in their lives because they found themselves. They found what they like to do. They like to do gardening, or they like to do buildings, or they like to read, and they're happy in their lives because it corresponds exactly to what they need inwardly, and they do it outwardly. We are always in search of this correspondence. That's the main thing what we are looking for. And that's our happiness. So our activity outside will be corresponding to our need inside. And that need of self-development is the leading force. And there is the contradiction between the nature and our inner psychological
And
being.
one more question about this, about nature and its tamas, its resistance to go from one position to another position. But this is about gunas, yes? Because we have three gunas in nature, and only tamas has this resistance. But we have also sattva, who, which move in us. It is also about nature. Why we should only point out only one guna and say that this is the nature?
Well, the complexity is bigger than just gunas. If it would be only within gunas, of course, nature has all gunas, and you can shift from tamas to rajas and be very energetic and do work, or you can find your equilibrium in sattva and be very well established. And sattva is this equilibrium between the activity and the rest, between rajas and tamas. So once you find equilibrium, you are in better position. Yeah. So we are looking for this equilibrium between the activity and the will and the resistance of nature. Nature is of two kinds. Nature is the material, which we are working upon, and nature is also an energy which is changing this material. So we are joining these two parties within nature, constantly moving from the energetic state to the rest state. And in between these two, there is one equilibrium, sattva. That is the view of Indian tradition on three gunas. By the way, not only Indian tradition, but other traditions also, occultistic tradition, they have also three gunas, quite interestingly. And not only this, the complexity grows not because of nature having three gunas, but because of us uniquely being involved here and looking for or searching for our own self-development. So sometimes we need rest when the nature is active, or sometimes we need activity when the nature is resisting. So we have this this connection between outer and inner. Our inner being needs constant involvement in the developmental sense. So once it is harmonized, the development of our inner self and even inner being with the outer activities, we have a very good chance of growing fast and being happy in life. But if it is not harmonized, then we have this suffering, and then we understand that the labor is difficult.
One more question about the inner self. Many people said, what is about? We speak about inner self and where we can find it. How can we be in touch with it? And because we speak about nature and we are always identifying with nature. That we are this nature, we are moving, we are doing, we are like this. And we see that there is another world, another space. It's something that called inner being, and how to find it, how to be in touch with it. It's very difficult to go through this veil.
Yes. Well, the difficulty lies in, as I understand it, in the difference, which is um, well, if I would say something like the inner self is the light within us, or the presence within us, our unique self, we can call it a soul, um, which is engaged in this particular natural environment, in this body, in this mind, in this vital. It operates and it looks for its own self-development and uses all the tools, our body, for this. Then of course it is easy to explain, but this very postulate is not acceptable by all. So I'm looking for another way of explaining it. Let us say, differently. For example, when we are active outside and we are losing our sense of self-perfection or self-presence. When we are outwardly working, we forget ourselves. We just feel the flow of energy. We are happy to be in this flow of energy, free from thinking about ourselves, free from solving any other problem. That's why labor can be joyful, because we forget about ourselves for a while. But forgetting about ourselves is not a solution, it seems, because it is only a partial solution. temporarily solution. For a while we rest without being troubled with our psychological problems, being engaged in some activity, yeah, and we are happy that we forgot that we have problems. And then we come back and we sit down and we think, wow, I have so many problems to solve. So all those other issues of the vital and mental nature trouble us. So we are seeking in solution in activity. So this is our constant shift from inner to outer. But if we could imagine that the inner would be freely finding its own presence within the outer and would not need to be forgotten, but in opposite, it could be found through activity. That would be a real solution, because then we don't need to forget ourselves in activity. We can find ourselves in activity. So this finding ourselves in activity is a new way of working, which we are looking for. This is a new concept of work, where work is a blessing rather than a curse. It's not to forget oneself in work, but to find oneself in activity. If this is possible, then many things are possible for human beings. The problem of our psychology is that we can be either perceptive of our inner self, then we have to stop activity, or we can be active, but then when we active, we forget about ourselves. We lose the connection with the inner perception. So we can be either active or perceptive. We cannot be both for some reason. It's difficult for us to remember ourselves when we are active. So how to remember ourselves, and even not only to remember, but discover and deepen the sense of our inner self present within the activity. That is the biggest challenge. And there are different views which can help us to find that way and to establish new approach to work, new concept of work as blessing. If the work, if every activity becomes educational, if the purpose of work is not to earn your livelihood, it is not to earn money and then to spend it on yourself, but to discover oneself, then the whole direction of work can change. The whole attitude towards work and the whole approach to work and labor can change. We will be looking for the activities which help us to realize who we are, to understand ourselves better. In this case, the work becomes a tool for our self-discovery. But there is a difficulty. Fundamental difficulty is within our do not know how to avoid this philosophical concept of indriyas of action, but there are senses of action in us which, when activated, they block our self-perception. When we start moving very fast in our body with our hands, legs, we start running, we forget, we lose the perception of our inner being. We do not we are not able to sustain our deeper sense of being. I try to avoid these terms soul and light and consciousness, trying to find new words, and they are not coming because they are not available for this kind of language. We have to coin new words to speak this language for the layman. But we may try this and we may find language, it may come. Well, anyhow, today is only a trial. So,
Yes, that's the first step. And what about just if 1 second? Okay. Um, and what about the harmony? We spoke last time about the harmony that the humanity wants to get this harmony in inside and outside. That is our big motivation to that move ourselves.
well, if you look at, yeah,
And what we are doing in the modern society, how we are trying to find this harmony, and what is and why we cannot do it.
yeah, the society is always looking for this, as you can see, the sustainability or survival. We are talking all the time about survival of global warming, how to sustain ourselves. What do we want to sustain actually? We want to sustain something which we achieved, which we realized in nature. And that is not going to work because the humanity is evolving and developing. And sustainability is needed for us only for one reason. We want to establish a harmony for a longer time, because within the harmony of a longer time, we will have a chance to work um, in a more luminous way and to find a deeper sense of our inner self. If the harmony is always disrupted by wars, uh, mm, by the natural disasters, and we have to always reconstruct and deconstruct what we are living in, then it becomes problematic for us to develop the inner connection with the outer activity. So we are um, constantly engaged in the mm, outer activities, forgetting our inner self. So how to establish this for a longer time? This is the biggest quest of humanity. But there is a reason behind. The reason is this inner self-development, finding peace, finding joy in living, finding meaningful relations with others and oneself. For all of it, peace is needed and harmony. Um, so this is the quest of humanity, what we are looking for. But the reason is deeper than just the harmony. Harmony is a tool or a means to achieve something which we are looking for, happiness. We are looking all for happiness. And what is happiness actually? It is a relation of inner and outer in harmonious way. Once the inner being harmoniously relates to outer activity, there is happiness. Uh, so harmony is a tool for that happiness. Happiness is a bliss, joy, which is rising from the depth of our consciousness and being, happily engaged in the activities, meaningful activities, which is supporting all surrounding, all relations, and can find that others are happy from this activity. In Sanskrit, there is a mantra that may all be happy, may all have peace, may all have fullness or perfection, and have auspiciousness. This is actually a profound mantra, because if all are happy, then happiness is multiplied thousandfold. It grows like a sea. Yeah? So mm, that's what we are looking for in the social context. But in the individual context and development, we need to find this correspondence between the inner need of development and the outer activity. So to become more aware of ourselves, to become more aware of our um, inner needs, uh, and to find the corresponding activity outside, which will help us to develop. I think this is the key to the change of the concept of work. What do you think?
Yes, true.
Mm. Okay, we are not. We are going beating around the bush. Yes.
Yes, but I think it's good.
Well, we will be beating around the bush for a while until we find our way. It's also
But
technical because it's like recording and all this. It's a little bit
but
stressful.
but I think it's good because we will have topics, small topics. It's not about that the whole thing will be in one movie.
Yeah.
And there will be a name about harmony, about the sustainability, about the inner and outer attitude, about inner self, about the nature and its problem. It will be topics, just 5 minutes each, and that will be, like podcast. Ты слушаешь, и оно у тебя превращается в полную картину. Но не сразу целиком, потому что съедет крыша.
Yes. Again, sound is off.
Нет,
No?
хорошо. Да. Я думаю, что мы сегодня, может быть,
Okay.
хорошо вот сейчас вот продвинулись. Я думаю, надо посмотреть, что мы записали, как-то поделиться этим, да?
Окей, ты вышли мне свое видео.
Я видео все не записывала, потому что я сижу просто молча, я записывала только свои вопросы.
Окей, ну так вот эти вопросы.
Мгм.